Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars Rebels episode review. This one's going to be for the Season 3 finale, 0 Hour, Part 1 and Part 2, two episodes. Overall, two very good episodes, and overall, they made for a really good finale. I do, though, question, if they kind of felt like finale episodes. Just because of how the season ends, it's like neither victory, it's not full defeat, it's just a battle happened and we're going to continue. There's not a lot set up to happen next, in that, like, the couple of little plot threads that are still open that they sort of alluded to, it doesn't really feel like this is like a season's worth of material that we're kind of building towards, and it kind of speaks to the fact that Rebels, I think over its entire run so far, while it's done the bigger stuff well in terms of getting the rebellion to this point where it kind of feels like it's there and thereabouts to being the rebellion that we see in the original trilogy, what they kind of haven't done so well is kind of character arcs for the main characters. In that, one of the, I think, plots that I was invested in the most throughout these episodes was the fate of Kallus. Whereas, like, Hera was just kind of there in the episode. Like, we haven't really had, like, a proper arc with her. She's just the member of the Ghost crew who happens to have the most connection to the rebellion. So we haven't really necessarily had a chance to have a proper, like, character arc with her. Equally, I think Kanan has just really fallen down this season. There's been very little focus on him as a character, and so his entire involvement in this episode was to somehow bring Bendu into the battle to protect them and just, I suppose, fight for the place where he actually lives. Which I'll get to. I'll talk about Bendu more later on, but just things like that. It didn't really feel character-wise like a finale, even if the battle felt like a finale, with regards to, like, stuff like the big Commander Sado's sacrifice, which was a really cool kind of clever tactic in the middle of the fight to give Ezra a chance to escape to bring some reinforcements. The overall way they executed the battle, I think, was well done. And it was definitely, like, having kind of two episodes to cover just an aerial engagement going down onto the ground. It was a really interesting battle, for sure. Just with regards to some of the tactics that they used, you could see that Thrawn is an amazing tactician. But you also saw some of the stuff like Constantine breaking formation, kind of going against Thrawn, and that leaving the opening. It just, to me, was a bit like, okay, the Rebels are about to plan an assault on Lothal. They are intercepted before it can happen. So the final bit of Season 3 is just an attack interception. It just didn't feel finale type stuff. Like, to me, this felt like a mid-season finale type conflict that would eventually build towards a bigger thing. But, it's just one of those ones where, as I said, the episodes were good. There was nothing wrong necessarily. It was just, it didn't quite feel like a finale, as I said, because the way it ends, just nothing is set up really for next season. Beyond, I think, just talking about the Bendu thing, him basically predicting Thrawn's future, that, like, you'll be defeated in the future, like these many arms will kind of wrap around you and that will end you, and he seems to react to this in a way where, like, I kind of know it's true in a way. So are they just setting up the idea that, like, at the end of Season 4 we'll see the death of Thrawn in terms of a big engagement that the Rebels win? To me, that's kind of all I really see happening right now with Season 4, is that we're eventually going to build, the Rebels will get a big victory, and that's how the show will end, or something like that, because I suppose towards the end of the video I'll get into some speculation on Season 4, and I will be doing a separate video where I talk about Season 3 overall, and that'll come out sometime next week. But as for these two episodes, as I said, the battle was really well done. The action was very nice. It was definitely just the character stuff that I think fell down a bit. It was just very much a big action set piece And there was investment because the idea was if there was a complete defeat at the hands of Thrawn here, the rebellion is dealt a near fatal blow with regards to this being their first kind of combined assault on something and it just falling apart. So it had impact for sure, like because it was a finale, you thought some characters could die. There were moments with the shields about to like fail that you would think like, oh, maybe Zeb or Rex is going to be killed here, and so on. So there's good moments with this episode, but there's also just like, it wasn't fully committed to. Sabine's involvement in the episode as the kind of transitioning point from the first episode into the second episode was interesting in that, okay, they're continuing that on, and that continues to be a lingering plot thread, that Sabine's mother let them go, just a couple of ships to help because they brought Sabine back to her and kind of are fixing things. So she gave some assistance to the rebellion. And Sabine's plan to take out the ship which was causing the gravity well, which was stopping them from being able to hyperspace away, was actually an interesting plan. That it was the victory on the side of the rebels in this episode was just escaping. So there's that. But again, like it didn't feel massively big. It was just some reinforcements. They happen to be Mandalorians, and at the end, Sabine is going to return, obviously, to Mandalore, and it looks like maybe some of the crew are going to help out in Mandalore for a while. So, yeah, I think that's really all there is with this episode. What's the best way to describe this episode? It's two really good episodes that, unfortunately, there's not a ton to say about because the importance of it wasn't like amazingly great. So that's kind of my thoughts on the season and how it kind of turned out. It's just like, yeah, there's some good stuff here, like seeing Bendu do the whole lightning thing, and then seemingly be kind of killed and I suppose turn into like a Force kind of spirit version of Bendu was quite interesting. And aspects of kind of what he talked about with Kanan and the argument that they had were interesting in that he very much presented that idea of the being who thinks themselves above everything, to the point where you can be very critical of their stance because, like, you are just a being that is alive. You are not taking a side in anything, and so are you actually participating in anything? What is the point in being neutral and constantly surviving if everything just is destroyed? So Kanan kind of forced Bendu's hand to at least make a choice. Admittedly, it was just kind of by calling him a coward that in the end forced it, but you know, it was interesting enough. I just feel like Bendu is so undefined as like a thing in the series that it didn't have as much impact as it perhaps could have, and just the idea of like, okay, it's this middle force being that's not light, not dark, but kind of aspects of both kind of balanced. And the force power that it has is the ability to merge with the weather and create lightning. It's just like, what's the force ability of this? Little kind of things like that are kind of weird. And that, like, even going back to like the Mortis trilogy, did those characters have that level of power where they could control the weather? I suppose the weather on Mortis was kind of controlled by the lighter dark side of the force, like which one was more in kind of balance at that point in time, but still, just a bit of a weird one in terms of our big kind of cosmic level being in the episode, and it kind of saving a lot of the rebels and allowing them to escape in a way, but also very much not being on the side of the rebels as well. So, you know, his final prediction to Kallus, was it just him predicting that the Empire will be defeated, or specifically to Thrawn? And it potentially speaks to the fact like Thrawn, even though he's like he studies all this stuff, he the way he talks about like Jedi and stuff like that, he seems to be very like anti-force, anti-light or dark side, anything like that, anti anything that he can't like just think about and imagine in his mind. So the force as this undefined thing that he can't use is this thing he doesn't like. So if they attempt to develop that going forward, that's interesting to me. But you know, I think that's more or less one of the last things I wanted to say about it. Hera called Kanan Love again. And I really am getting frustrated with this show with how it refuses to define what their relationship is. The amount of things that this can do with regards to destroying everyone, clearly suggesting the amount of people that are killed within this episode, destroying things, blowing things up. Last episode having like Obi-Wan kill Maul right there on screen, but you seem almost afraid of just establishing that Kanan and Hera are in a somewhat romantic relationship, and I don't get why. I think it would add a lot to the show to have that dynamic be a little bit more clear, that they are actually in a relationship, and it would add stuff to their characters as well. Because right now it's just this weird thing of like, okay, they clearly know each other, and they're the two members of the Ghost Crew that have been like together for the longest, minus Chopper. But their refusal to properly just commit to what that relationship is so frustrating to me. So frustrating. I really don't get why it refuses to do that. Because I'd like a little bit of romance in the show to add something. Because, as I just talked about, the one thing you can be really critical of in this show is that just they haven't done. There's not a lot of character arcs going on with our main characters, and so even a romance plot would actually be good at this point for me. But anyway, yeah, that's season 3. So let's talk about what does this in any way present for season 4. I really have no idea. Now, we obviously, our celebration's coming up shortly. We're going to get some sort of news about season 4. I assume it will have to be confirmed as being the last season of Rebels. Just with the weirdness around, like, this is the finale, event, and then the lack of stuff set up, I think they have to bring it to a close here. The only stuff that's set up is that I assume there'll be some things with Mandalore, something terrible is going to happen with Mandalore, which causes Mandalorians to not be a part of the rebellion going forward. Something's going to happen there. I think potentially one of the only big things that they can do in this last season is either have a bunch of episodes that potentially focus on the likes of like Bail Organa, Princess Leia, or maybe even Obi-Wan and Tatooine, like set up A New Hope a little bit more. Or just kind of commit to basically a lot of these characters kind of can't survive into A New Hope, so like the death of Ezra, the death of Kanan, that sort of thing. Potentially like the death of Sabine and so on. This group of rebels kind of, in a way, most of them perhaps meeting their end. It seems weird that that's potentially one of the only big things that they can do, just kind of kill off the entire main cast, but it feels like one of the only things that they can do going forward, in that they can't have Kanan and Ezra survive much longer in the series. Like, they can't survive more than like 2 years longer because of the time situation that we're in. So they're in a really, really weird situation here where I feel that this show kind of wouldn't want to do that, where it ends like with just the death of all of the characters. But they kind of have to do it in a way. Because I don't see how this show is going to end effectively without kind of doing something like that. Because otherwise you've basically accomplished the overall goal of Rebels. Getting the Rebels from just completely scattered groups of like 3 or 4 or 5 to becoming a reasonable opponent for the Empire. You've basically it's happened basically now. You just have to get to the final stages of all this stuff happening. They're probably going to further establish Yavin Base, as they kind of alluded to at the end of the episode, and get the final things into position. Akbar, I assume they'll maybe use him at some point next season, but definitely I don't know what they're going to do with Kanan and Ezra going forward. I really, in terms of like them as Jedi who are just there, it feels like the whole stuff with Maul being over, their training pretty much seeming to be over. It feels like those characters are in a way done. Now they're constantly keeping the whole idea of like Ezra is potentially going to go dark. They're constantly keeping that alive without fully getting rid of it. So maybe they'll do something along those lines. There's just still potential for Inquisitors to be a thing, and then of course I think they will have to use Vader again at some point. And potentially Ahsoka. I'd like to see some confirmation on what happened with Ahsoka, and I think that could be maybe one of the only ways to commit to doing something big. reveal what exactly happened with Ahsoka, is she still alive or not, what decision did Vader make to kill her or not, and have some big confrontation at the end with Vader, Kanan, and Ezra. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say in this video. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the Season 3 finale of Star Wars Rebels. Again, to quickly sum up my thoughts on the episode, I really liked both episodes. I thought they were action-packed and very enjoyable. I'm happy that, like, Kallus is now part of the Rebel group. I'm kind of happy, that no one was killed, really, just yet. But I do feel that it has us in a position now where the series is so undefined now going into Season 4. And I think that is something to be a little bit critical of. The situation that the finale was based around didn't quite feel finale worthy as such. But, as I said, 2 really, really good episodes of Rebels, even if everything wasn't perfect. Let me know your thoughts on Season 3. And also what if anything, do you expect to happen in Season 4? I'm kind of lost on what they're going to do with Season 4. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.